Vivek, I am extremely excited to be in conversation with you. I have been following your work for quite some time now, and I think Sir for me was the icing on the cake. In fact, it's great to have you on Filme Shilmy. So thank you for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I think it's been a great time for you, Vivek. Last year you were seen in A Suitable Boy, and then as a producer, The Disciple made huge waves on the festival circus and did extremely well on that front. And now, obviously, you've been working on Bombay Begums with Alankrita, and obviously now Sir is finally streaming on Netflix as well. How would you best express your current space as an artist? I mean, has this been the level of achievement you've always strived towards?
Um, I don't know, man. Uh, I I mean, there's a lot of things, right? I mean, I always knew that I wanted to work as an actor, but I don't think I understood what it entails till I was in my like 20s. And once I'd done my training and all of those things, I never ever thought I'd be producing. I never thought I'd produce a film. I always thought I'd produce a play before I'd produce a film. I I wanted to and still want to do stuff in theater as well. So it's really hard uh, to imagine, that yeah, it's just I don't know if this is exactly what I wanted it to be or this is what it's supposed to be. It's hard to answer that question. All I know is that after working for a long time, all of a sudden it feels like a little spotlight is on my journey. All of a sudden,
Yeah.
and I feel like a lot more people want to know what I'm up to, or all of a sudden I'm getting a few more options for auditions that I didn't before. So all of that feels great. Yeah, all of that feels great. But yeah, I don't know if this is it, if this is the height of everything. I don't know any of that. I'm just kind of still in the process, in the journey. But it certainly has been a very lucrative, wonderful 2 years where everything has all of a sudden come out. So
Indeed.
I'm appreciative of that.
Indeed, I presume it must feel like a newcomer for you, right? You must feel like, अरे पर मैं तो यहीं पे था, like अब
Yeah,
सब लोग मुझे पहचानने लगे हैं. Like it must have that sort
right.
of feeling, right?
Yes, and I'll be honest, like ऐसे नहीं है, मैं बॉम्बे में मैं घूमता रहता हूँ, मेरे को कोई नहीं पहचानता, so it's fine. But
Oh,
yeah, like on all these platforms and things like that, it feels like a lot of my work is being discussed. And sorry, that's my dog.
oh, he's so
And
cute.
yeah, yeah, he nearly fell over. Um, so sorry, this is very distracting.
No, it's really
No,
cute. I
it
love
is.
it.
Yeah, yeah, his name is Bozo. No, Baba. Sit down. He is sorry, not him. What were we talking about? Work, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, no, you were saying that. Yeah, it feels good that like I know that I'm not being recognized so much. I have my privacy and things like that. But yeah, it not so much as a newcomer, but yeah, there's a sense of, oh yeah, I've been around. But um, it works like that. I have a lot of friends who've been around long enough, and I knew that if I just my goal so far was just to be part of the business somehow,
yeah,
and create stuff or just keep hustling and trying to book jobs. And I knew that at some point, everybody's turn comes. You just have to last in the city, I feel.
true. It's true.
So, and I moved here when I was 24 years old. I'm like 41 right now. You know,
Wow.
I'm going to be 42 next month. So it's been a good, whatever, 16 odd years since I moved to India and Bombay for work, So,
Sure. Yeah, we'll be
yeah.
speaking a lot about that actually, about that whole sort of movements that you've had, I think, across different countries and different cities. But Ashwin, your character in Sir seems to be a common man, yet somewhat imperfect mold of a Prince Charming. I mean, when you read the script, is that the sort of impression you had about him as well?
Um, right. Like when I read it, I thought, Are, he's such a nice guy. How can, like, how can it be just so, how can anybody be so clean? And, then I spoke to Roehna about it, and what we have tried to fill in in his silences and kind of what happens in his mind and in his eyes and internally, because there is the backstory. Because Ashwin is kind of even though the marriage kind of dissipates, and when the film starts, he's walked out on a marriage, and all of that has happened. The reason that he moved to India in the film as well, and I mean, you don't see any of that, but he's asked to step up, and there's a sense of loss that he's been feeling in his own life, and he tried to live a different life to be a better son and all those things. So those are things that we kind of colored in, which was not there on paper, but there were some things which were kind of involved. So he's, and I kind of like the fact that he's trying to live this life of the other, despite having privileges, to be so restricted. To having so many options, and like to have all the luxuries on his fingertips, but he's still not able to use it, and he feels so weak, compared to Ratna's character, who's got so many challenges, and yet she's full of life, and she's embracing life, and things like that. So yeah, so there was, but yeah, when I first read it, I was like, he's too nice a guy. I don't think it works. It doesn't. There has to be some gray in it and things like that. And but then it's one of those things also, like, you got to completely submit to the text. And Roehna was very clear with what she wanted. Like, she knew it was a love story. And then somewhere along the way, the reason I did it is, of course, like, it's the opportunity to play a male lead. It's working with Tillotama Shome, who's like someone whose work I look up to. And at the same time, it was just to do a film about love,
Yeah.
I love love. Who doesn't love love, man? And so what if it was a Cinderella story? But it was, and the way Roehna shot it, you can't escape the city, So it's hard to think of a Cinderella story with this city around you, and
Yeah.
it's politics, and it's just Bombay,
Mm.
But yeah, it was. I can see that. But hopefully I didn't in my head, think anything like Prince Charming. I just kind of tried to find his flaws somewhere, and
Yeah.
that came in discussions with Roehna. Actually, the loss of his brother, because the
Okay.
father is obviously in the film. So his younger brother has died, and that's why who was going to be running the business and who would be the proper son, which is why he's come back and he works for the dad, and that's why he wants to become a writer. There are things that he talks about in the film.
Um, because it is really a desirable character. I think a lot of us have been like, "Ha, pati ho to aisa ho," like we all want like a sort of partner like Ashwin, and I think it's quite nice to see that, because what's happened is, Vivek, and I'm sure you'll be able to resonate with this a lot as well. For many years in Hindi cinema, toxic masculinity has been kind of showcased as very endearing, in which essentially the couple remains together rather than showing the actual dire consequences of being with someone of that sort of nature. Since
Right.
Ashwin is obviously a slight exception to that, how do you think this narrative can, I guess, change or at least start a dialogue within Indian cinema? And what can be done, do you think, to kind of not glorify toxic characters generally?
Right. Well, people are going to make what they're going to make. Everybody has the freedom to do what they want, and if somebody wants to tell a story in that manner and portray characters in that way, it's their right. Everybody should have a right to make the film they want. Um, but I think if they choose to be socially aware or responsible and want to take that on, then I think um, those creators and people should be a lot more sensitive to what they're creating, and the power of film and cinema, where it can reach out to a lot of people. But that's something that people should want to do. Not everybody wants to do it. If something works, if a formula works, people are just going to move forward with it. In society, how to get rid of this toxic masculinity and all of that, everything comes from education. Good education for everyone, you know, all down the ranks. You will not move ahead if everyone, whether somebody who works in my house or somebody who is a mechanic son or whichever strata of society they are, we need to provide free and good education for everyone. And then
Yeah.
the next step, I believe, it's your parenting. It's how you're raised,
Yes.
how you treat your mother, your father, and those kind of experiences, how you are responsible within your building and treat an elder or because we're all living on top of each other. So I think these sensibilities have to come from within, have to come from an household, and more responsible, caring citizens that really understand that we are a community and we affect each other like that. And
Hmm.
then it goes back to, well, what do you want to portray on cinema? Are you making films for your own benefit? You want to do 5 songs, look really good, look really strong, trying to pretend to bring some sort of a 1970s angry young man and all that kind of,
Yeah,
which is fine, which worked at a certain time, but we have moved away from that.
of
We
course.
are, and we should embrace that. We should embrace that, and then we should put in the kind of effort it takes to make different kind of stories and not be lazy.
Yeah.
I think all of these things kind of would help us to improve things. But at the end of the day, I'm a big proponent of like freedom of speech and things like that. So if you want to make a film about that, great, good for you. I think the audience is getting smart now. They have access to all these platforms. They are going to catch all of us making crappy stuff and trying to sell it off to them, because they can watch Avengers in like 8 languages, in 8 regional languages, or whatever it is, right? They can watch
Yes.
Pieces of a Woman on Netflix. They can watch all of these things. And for like 60 rupees or 100 rupees a month, I know some of them can afford it. And then there's all these other access. So I think their minds are, I think they're getting to a place where they'll be more accepting for different stories.
Indeed.
And all of a
Yes.
sudden, and that should then in turn give strength to our writers. And anyways, this is the dream. But again, in the last 18 months, all this the crappy conversations about internet censorship and all of that has again put a little spanner in the in the
Works.
mix of
Yeah.
this. Yeah, because because now all of a sudden people feel like some sort of censorship is coming. So now again, a writer would think twice. Again, you're worried about whether my what I'm trying to say would actually come out or not. So it's
Hmm.
tricky, but it can happen, man. If you really want to do it, it can happen, and it comes with responsibility,
Absolutely.
and what you want to do. Yeah.
Very well said. And I think
Master.
sort of continuing that conversation a little bit, because obviously Sir is quite an optimistic and hopeful perspective on how love and human relationships can overcome the grim reality of class disparity in India. Right? That's the
Yeah.
sort of undertone that I kind of interpreted from the film. I mean, given that Ashwin sort of in a way rejects the idea of segregation, so to speak, and kind of overcomes the whole disparity. In what way do you hope conversations can transpire with the film and perhaps work towards a more hopeful future?
But I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if people are going to be like looking at them, servant, and ask them to eat on the table with them or things like that. But I think the questions that ask, I mean, it's a good conversation to have. And I know people who have had that conversation, and like we are in India, in Asia, we're all dependent on our maids, ama, helper, didi, bhaiya, everybody. Gender across. We have all these guys who are kind of keeping us going and taking care of our lives. So it's good. I hope that the film leads to at least some sort of sensitivity to that, if you didn't have that before, or some sort of realization. Tilly and I, and we were all doing an interview a couple of days ago and something, and I told her, I said, imagine if we did this film after lockdown. Look at the
Yeah,
impact lockdown has had, especially in India.
true.
All of a sudden, maids were not allowed in the building. Senior citizens were alone. Their kids are abroad. They're calling their friends in India to be like, "Can you go check my parents? Because the DD is not going. I don't know how. Who's going to cook?" All of these things became a life or death thing. And then all of a sudden, the same vitamin you're having or the same zinc you're having to protect yourself from a virus, the minute the DD comes in the house, you're like, you also have some zinc, huh? Abhi tum khayal rakhna, mask, ye lo mask bhi pehen lo, sanitizer bhi le lo. All these things became so important because you realize how much you needed them. And so I hope what's happened last year would also, forget whatever happens with the film with whoever sees it, but all of this should again reiterate how important our community is around here, and especially these folks who work for us, who sacrifice so much. And
Yeah.
and there's no harm in showing a little bit of sensitivity to that and care to that. And anyways, I wonder if we did the film now, what kind of an impact it would have, within that relationship where there's a full lockdown and you're stuck. But
Definitely.
yeah, yeah. Anyways,
Yeah, no,
so
definitely. I think it's a very valid point there as well. But I think speaking a bit more about yourself, Vivek, so you were born in India, and then I believe you moved to
yeah,
Singapore before you moved back to India. So what
yes.
impact has your background and roots had on you as a person, and how, if at all, has this sort of your background and the sort of upbringing and the roots and the sort of
Yeah,
exposure you've had to different cultures, how has that kind of impacted the sort of works you choose to pursue?
right. Um, yeah, so you're spot on. I was born in Jaipur in Rajasthan,
Uh-huh.
and then I moved. My father had moved for work in Singapore. This is like in the late 80s. So my folks decided, like my mom wanted to continue working, and she was working in the legal system. So she ended up being retiring as a high court justice. So she had her own aspirations, and dad was always very supportive of that. So she said like, okay, you do that, and then let me go to Singapore. And he went to Singapore as part of a banking thing that would happen. They would select, but eventually he joined the private sector there. And at that time, I think in the 90s, they would do the expat packages where they pay for your kid and they give you a car depending on your position. And so the option of sending me to an international school was there, and all of a sudden, and of course we were not that well off then. I mean, my parents kind of built, and dad especially just flew once he moved to Singapore, kept working in the corporate structure, and just did well and well and well. And everything we have, so I kind of saw not having anything to all of a sudden being in Singapore, and we have that's a swimming pool and this is a tennis court because every condominium in Singapore had one. And so that was a big shift, but I'm very fortunate my parents decided to do that. So yeah, so I moved to Singapore in like 1990 or something when I was 10 years old, and I did my high school there in United World College of Southeast Asia, which is like the IB system, and it's like a Brit school. So it's like I also had an accent, and all my friends were like, so that picked up, and I kept doing theater through IB. Like theater was one of
Yeah.
my hires in IB, and I was very clear that I wanted to do. And my dad was very clear that I should not be doing that, and I should be doing economics. And my mom, who was in the legal profession, was already disappointed that she couldn't hear law in any of these two words. So, yeah. But yeah, and then so I moved to Singapore, and at that time, my dad had also decided to take up Singapore citizenship. You apply and whatever, and when I turned 18, I went to the Singapore Army for 2.5 years, and then I became a Singaporean citizen. Yeah, right after high school. And then when I was 21, I went to the States where I did my undergrad in acting. Really, did like a BFA in Emerson College in Boston,
Okay.
which is like a 4-year course, and your kind of emphasis on theater, but you do all the text and you have to audition and re-audition, and eventually, yeah, it's like being in a conservatory with a class of like 14 to 20 people for 2 years, and you work on
Yeah.
text and movement and all of that. So I did all of that, moved back to Singapore, I guess in 2004. Briefly worked as like assistant teacher in like with kids and stuff, like
Oh,
imagination and all
wow.
that stuff. Like
Oh,
yeah, just for a little bit to just make a buck after college, and then just was not really feeling it in Singapore, and decided to just jump in and move to India. And my dad wasn't well, so I knew I didn't want to stay back in the States. That was an option to go to LA and do that whole LA thing. But I
hmm.
decided, and I wanted to also be part of Indian stories. I speak Hindi. I kept that going while I was in abroad, and at home we did. I remember in the 80s when I was growing up, we had gone and watched movies. I was a fan of Bachchan when I was young, before I knew what,
Yeah.
before you were exposed to those kind of, your parents take you to movies, right? What else do you
Yes.
do? Even in Singapore, my mom was in India. So dad and I would watch every movie on the weekend. That's kind
Sure.
of like whatever movie would be released, you just go and watch it.
Yeah.
And that's your entertainment with your folks.
Yeah.
So films were always a big part, and acting is something I really wanted to do. And then yeah, then I just moved here. And how did it affect? I mean, let's just look at Sir. I know what it means to have a maid in, because the woman who raised me, she was Indonesian, and so I can speak a little Bahasa, and I learned all of that. Just she knew me since I was 14 till she passed away. She was with me,
Oh,
and I took care
wow.
of her when she got sick as well. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And my dad also passed away early, like about, it's going to be 11 years now. So, and he was ill. So after that, he passed away, and then my maid passed away. So I realized the importance of all these people who raised me who just disappeared. So I think those things kind of helped me, just to talk about Sir, in terms of how maids are treated in Southeast Asia. There's also different kind of abuse claims there. Then you look at what's happening in the Middle East with what
Mhm.
they do with domestic help, Philippines. It's complicated. So
Sure.
all those things, just for Sir, I was very aware of. And having studied in the U.S., and I was there when the Iraq War was happening. My second year was when the towers fell. While I
Right.
was in stuff, yeah, and I remember that very well. So I was also surrounded by a lot of this conversation about what freedom of speech, right to voice personal opinion,
Hmm.
and freedom of the press. These things are already very important. And also in Singapore, which has its own kind of way of existing and having a lot of control, to put it politely, these things are very relevant to me. So that's why the scenes in court that you see, which I produced and I'm acting in it also, were all those things that were really important to me.
Hmm.
And then yeah, so I think my background really helped with that. Just
Yeah.
being fortunate enough to go to a high school that even my dad couldn't afford it. It was just the company could afford it. It's part of his job thing. Like those
Hmm.
things don't exist anymore. There aren't no expat packages. It was just such a 80s 90s thing, I think. But yeah, I grew up with, like, I have friends all over the world. I traveled a lot. I get to hear their stories, and then you always are trying to relate with the others. Like, so when I
Right.
moved to Bombay, I didn't know anyone, and I had to rework on my language, and let go of my accent, at least to convince them on camera I can. I mean, I speak how I do now. I've just given up trying to convince people because there's enough work there now, so they totally get it. So people call me for all kinds of things. But it took a while. The first few years, people wouldn't give me a lot of stuff. Um, yeah, and even the play I got, which became a film, which is also in one of these OTT platforms. The President is Coming. I don't know if you've heard of that. It's a very tiny film. We did it as a play. But in
Okay.
that also, I'm an American. But
Right.
like I got pigeonholed in the beginning very early, and then I kept doing plays, trying to do different characters because I wasn't getting much of a break on film and stuff. And
Hmm.
I had also done television when I first came in very early. I did like a soap, and I
Yes.
realized that, oh shit, this is, yeah. And I was like, oh
Asitma.
shit, I can't do this. This is just, yeah. It blew my mind, man. It blew my mind. I mean, it was a great job because you're out of college, 6 months in. I landed in Bombay. I somehow got into the audition room and I booked it because their character was also kind of lives abroad, married to a German. That was my track. So I was like, okay,
Sure.
it kind of worked. Yeah, exactly, sure. Uh, so it was a great experience. I learned a lot. I learned about all the things I don't know. And then I
Right.
also learned about very quickly, like, oh, I don't want to work like this because people were working on TV back then, like churning out, people are
That's
writing
true.
stuff. And
Yeah.
I'd come from a very serious theater training where text is king. So it took a while. And then eventually, when I decided to make my own films, for us, when people ask us, like, what do you look for in a project when you're producing, it's the script. And once,
Right.
because every time you have a disagreement, you always go back to the word on the page. And even though I wasn't being able to get that for myself as an actor, I was able to create that with my collaborator Chaitanya Tamani, and make those little worlds, and that felt really good. And that was unexpected. I didn't think it was going to happen, man. It just
Yeah.
happened very organically, and it became what it did. And then I said I'll never produce again, and then I produced again, and now I'm like, I'll never produce again. So yeah.
It's true
But
actually.
yeah, all of this exposure, yeah.
I
Sorry.
read I read somewhere actually that I think they used the term that you were an accidental producer.
Yeah.
That's what I read up. Is that what is would
Yeah.
you agree with that as well?
Sure. I can agree with that. I mean, once I decided there wasn't any accidents, but yeah, it just kind of happened because at that time, you had if you had half the funding, and she went to NFDC, the National Film Development Corporation in India here, the film body. They were trying to match your half with their grants, or they would try and find the money for you if you have half, and then you could kind of make your film. But by the time it came to our turn to try and do that, we realized that there was a lot of backlog and they were not able to do that. So that whole program got suspended. And by that time, I was so immersed in court, and I just said, fuck it, we'll do it. So I
Hmm.
kind of, my dad had passed away, and he left me some stuff, and I just decided to put that in films, which is maybe smart, maybe not.
It's very interesting actually how you said that you kind of invested whatever like your dad had left behind for you. And I think
Yeah.
but when you choose a script, that vision that you have as an actor when you're choosing a project, do you necessarily have that same vision when you're choosing a film to produce as well?
Yeah. I mean, look, uh, yeah, whatever I do as a producer is life or death. Okay, because at the end of the day, I've gone around the world and everybody has told me in every country and in many different languages how stupid it is to put your own money into film. After they watch the film we have made and said, what a great film. And then they say, well, you're pretty stupid to put your own money. And I have smiled and said, thank you. but I'm glad you like the film. So thank you. But yeah, man, it is what it is. We are not in a position here to have the kind of funding we have abroad, whether it's France
Yeah.
or Germany or the European countries or wherever else. It's a different kind of world here. You got to make your thing. You got to put your money where your mouth is. It takes a big risk, and my parents, and especially my father, worked really hard to make the money he did. He didn't have any business. He didn't inherit anything. He came from rags to riches story. So I feel an added sense of responsibility that whenever I will see him up in heaven or whatever happens next, I
Mm.
will have to look him in the eye and say, yeah, I, blew the responsibility here or blew those funds there. And so far, I stand by every decision. So when I choose as a producer, it's very important. And now, the way the world is going, it's very important not only to have a great script but a great director and a relationship with a director. You need to
Yeah.
know everything about a person. Let's not forget the kind of controversies that are happening in the last few years, where people have been outed for Me Too and abuse and harassment on sets and things like that. So when you make a film with someone, you're in bed with them forever. It's
It's true.
it's how they live their life, and what choices they make. And same with my director, he might do a great job, but if I mess up my life and my morals and stuff, then it brings everybody down. And you're employing 100 people a day sometimes when you're shooting. Like most of our
True.
projects, like Disciple, had like huge crews. So
Correct.
everybody's riding on it. It's people. So you have to be very responsible, not only with the kind of script, but the kind of team you have, and rightfully so that we are all in the business being held accountable for our
Mm.
team and who we collaborate with and all those things. So I think all of those things matter. But as a producer, yes, I'm very very serious. I'm very aware uh, of uh, of of the value of these funds that I have. Not it's
Yeah.
just what it's worth. It is worth bazillions more to me, because
Uh,
it's somebody's
right.
blood and sweat. So it has to mean something, and all the films that I've done have, well, three. So definitely the Chaitanya films that we have done, they're coming out in the second one, the Balik Empire as well, which I can't really talk about too much. Will also find its uh, time of day. But I stand by what the film is about and how it's made, what it's talking about. These things matter, and they're all things I would want to discuss with the world out there.
Mm.
Like I would want to know, what do they think about censorship? What do they think about in Disciple, the search of excellence and questioning your own quality and art and reflecting on the world that's happening around you in Bombay. Bombay of 2020 or 2019 or Bombay of 2014 and things like that. Because I realized that it was very important for me to make Bombay and me one. Because if you're
Yeah.
not one with your city, how can you tell stories here? How can I claim to act here and tell these stories with this language and have that skin?
Yes.
So yeah.
Yeah, it's true. You have to really embrace your surroundings in order to tell that story compelling in a compelling manner. So I think that's one thing that I also agree with. But I think you know what, Vivek. Nowadays there is a craving for good content, and I feel people just want
Right.
good, good films or series to watch, and which is perhaps why now independent cinema is perhaps booming more than ever. Also thanks to the web and the emergence of the digital space
Hmm.
in India
Hmm.
as well and globally, of course. But how confident are producers now in bankrolling ventures which are not stereotypically mainstream, so to speak?
Um, I don't know, man. I don't know how much it has changed. It looks
Mm,
good from the outside. It makes sense. OTT's coming. There are 100 of things. Everybody's shooting. I feel sometimes we've barely learned how to, master the craft of making a 2 hour film. Now we're talking about making, 800, 600 minute long format web series. So, it'll take time to learn. And fortunately or unfortunately, a lot of this power lies with the OTT platforms about how brave they want to be, how experimental they want to be. Because
mm,
eventually, if they don't take the lead, it's really very few places we can go. And after last
mm,
year's lockdown, theaters are still not open. How am I supposed to go and show my film anywhere? Where is my revenue stream going to come from? It's
sure.
only if I sell it to an OTT platform. And I'm very
Mm,
grateful for OTT platforms. Don't get me wrong, but I'm saying it's very hard for me to know what they're thinking and where they want to go in terms of producing content. In terms of us, whatever small time producers who are trying to put in our own money, mortgage houses, and do all these silly things, we do have the option now of not fighting a theatrical battle and try to have some recovery by going onto these OTT platforms. We do have a option here of getting our work across a lot.
Hmm.
Is this gonna make us braver? Are we gonna take more chances, or are we gonna become safe? Are we going
True.
to go
Yeah.
into the television of 10 years ago? Are we
Yeah.
going into, because everybody has a freaking app. Everybody's just putting an app. Disney's putting an app. Not like in 3 years from now, everybody's making the same thing. We're back to
Yeah.
those formulas. You just either, like I worry about that. And I think the lead there can only come from these OTT platforms and their creative content heads.
Oh.
Whoever is doing that, whoever is greenlighting in all these platforms, they have a lot of power.
Hmm.
Because other than that, even the other big production houses, if you can't release a film, how are you going to get your money back? How will
True.
you make that film? And I don't know how the audiences, when and how they will respond once the theaters really open.
Hmm.
So it's really a very strange place to try and imagine sort of like like a chain of like pre-production to post to recovery. I don't know how to do that right now. Where will it come from? I have no idea. So
Yeah.
I'm a little nervous about that, but I do know that there are a lot of youngsters coming into the business in
Yeah.
India, a
Hmm.
lot of talent, men and women and others and all genders, and they are coming from, they're getting trained and coming. They're very disciplined. They're a lot more savvy than I am. They're millennial kids. They're better with technology. They can have their vlogs and their YouTube channels and all of that independence, and they can create content like nobody's business. So, and I don't think, I think the youth is just, it's very exciting. I think they
Yeah.
will be the ones who will carry it forward, who will break. And I think we are kind of in that transition,
Yeah.
where that is happening.
Hmm.
Because the audience are going to be good. We're going to realize now in 6 months, because you see all this content that comes now, some of it is like shot 8, 9 months ago, right?
Yes.
So it was
Exactly.
approved 2 years ago. It was approved 2 years ago. Now, who knew
Hmm.
what it was 2 years ago, right? So
Hmm.
now, after like the reality, if I shoot a film in reality, everybody should be wearing a mask. If I have a
True.
big shot of, right, how do I do all of, like what is the new
Yeah.
world we're living in? What are the stories we're going to tell? I also think we're processing a lot of what has happened in the last year mentally, physically, emotionally with ourselves, because now that the new year has started, everybody's like, well, you had a whole year off. Now go make some work, go do shoots, get on it. We were all doing nothing, right? But
Yeah.
even as though it might have felt like we were doing nothing, but a lot was being done to us,
Yeah.
you know,
It's
and we
true.
are still processing that. I mean, so there's a lot going on, but I am hopeful, but I'm not that hopeful. I feel it'll take a little while. I feel like we're going to fall into a little trap of that whole TV thing of the back in the day, because
Yeah.
yeah,
It's
because I
true.
mean, look at what's coming,
Yeah.
and one thing becomes a hit, then you'll have three things with that same kind of temperature, tonality, language, and then again you realize that 9 months later, so it's because of that, or is this a Delhi crime effect? Is this a Patal Lok effect? Is this a Sacred Games effect? And if we keep doing that, which is something we've been doing all the time, whether there was OTT or not, then it's not going to be. We
Ah.
need original thinking. We need a lot more support. We need even the producers to have some sort of a training to understand what producing is. Me included,
Yes.
I learned on the job. I didn't know,
No.
you
Right.
know, like what a producer does. You just kind of did it and figured out, and was fortunate that we figured out, because it can be disastrous. A lot of people start off to make the first film and never finish it. So,
Sure. No,
we not only finished and did well. So like there's, yeah,
it's true
yeah.
actually, because
Sorry.
even Supriya Pathak ma'am said the same thing as well, because she loves the OTT platforms and she loves the content that's emerging. But she's also worried that it'll also go through the TV wala phase. And like you mentioned, I think that this whole reaffirms that whole fear, I think, that many of us have as well. But
Yeah,
perhaps that's probably best why we have film festivals like Venice and obviously the London Film Festival, Cannes. Perhaps that's why it's great that you have that platform as well for you as someone who kind of champions independent cinema. I guess that kind of
right.
gives you a sense of exposure as well as
Yeah.
more ability to kind of show your work and get more business as well in that sense, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, definitely, before, like when we made Court and we got into Venice, the only thing we were really happy about is like, hey, we're going to have a screening on a big screen, because I didn't know we were going to release it. What happened with the film and all, and we did release, and all of that happened. But earlier you just wanted, because you spend so much money, you spend so much time on post, you make the film look a certain way. It's for the big screen. The magic of a big screen is, and it's very different than when I'm sitting at home. I can have the biggest TV at home, right, and watch
Mm.
it, and great sound system and stuff. But I'm in my home. I'm not in a communal watching. It's a very different experience. I can pause it. I can do this. A phone call comes. I don't really commit to watching. I'm sure if you watch one film on a big screen and the same film at home, it'll make you feel completely different.
Yeah.
You will miss certain things and you'll be like, oh, this is nothing. Because maybe when you watch it on TV, you're like, yeah, this is just like TV. You don't get that cinematic um, sense to
Experience.
it,
Yeah.
and experience to it, and I do feel that, a lot of us filmmakers really want that, and we crave for that. So yes, film festivals are great for that. Film festivals are great for also showcasing, because we are very fortunate to be working in India, which is the largest film industry in the world. But we also are unfortunately in a country which doesn't have equal amounts of theaters to cater this large flow of films. So
Mm.
every weekend, if you have 5 films releasing, out of which three of the major films will take all the best slots, then I'm going to lose that battle. To bypass all of this, and who's going to spend another, because by the time we finish our film as independent, we have like literally put the shirt on our back to make it happen, and then
Uh-huh.
we borrow money to go to these festivals. उसके बाद कहाँ से पैसा लाएं रिलीज करने के लिए, so
Mm.
you're fighting these battles. So that way I'm very appreciative of the film festivals, and not only for the films that you have to show, but they also have programs for scripting. Like Berlin right now has a talent campus that's coming up, right? They're trying,
Mm.
which is a great thing, which has been going on for years. And you have people from all over India, and we have some all over the world, and we have people from India going over there, meeting others, other producers, whether they're actors, directors, and getting exposed to all those kind of cinema, making those connections. And then when they go make their films, they would have that network outside where they're not dependent on, like, South Bombay, Bandra, and Yari Road in Andheri. It's a little bit more than that, which is
Yeah.
great because the world is way bigger than that. Although it all seems like everything happens between Bandra and Andheri,
Sure.
in Bombay. So yeah, these film festivals are great, man, and you get to watch other people's cinema. Not only that, and I remember when I was here, there was nowhere to watch. I remember when Mami was before, Anupama and all changed it and got it. Mami Film Festival made it a lot more,
Accessible.
popular and mainstream, and put in, yeah, and put in a lot of money to do that. But before that, there's nowhere else for us to watch. And how can you grow if you're not exposed to all different kinds of cinema and to learn? And how can we, you know, if we don't have that, then our youth will only make a certain kind of film. We'll all just be repeating the same kind of art. So I'm very grateful for these film festivals, and I really, appreciate that. Some of them even have cash prizes that help you, and you
Mm.
win one, and then it opens a lot of doors to just to meet others and learn from them.
Mm.
So yeah, very grateful for film festivals. I hope they survive, because we don't know what's going to happen, Bobby.
Yeah.
This year we don't know. Like, we were lucky that Venice decided to do a physical, and we actually went to Venice. It was the first
Yes.
film festival after the lockdown. Yeah, so it's quite
Yeah.
insane, but they pulled it off. They
I
pulled it
know.
off. We
True.
were doing masks, we were had like all of that. We pulled it off. So, the great thing is that we as human beings always find a way to, get back in there.
Get
So I'm hoping we'll preserve some of that old qualities. We will
mm.
save our cinemas, and cinemas will still be standing when we come out of the lockdown, because it costs a lot of money to keep a theater shut. And you've heard in the US, in the UK, a lot of
Yeah.
these big chains are going under.
Yeah, massively. I'm looking forward, Vivek. It seems to be a
Me
very
too.
exciting time for you as well. Because you're obviously, as I mentioned as well at the beginning, you're in Bombay Begums as well with Alankrita. So, what is that project like? I mean, what was your experience like working on that?
Well, the experience was great. So we shot it a little while ago. So we shot it end of 19 going into 20, something like that, I think.
Okay.
So we shot Suitable Boy, kind of something like that, what I did, or in 19. I don't know. I forgot it. Anyway, the 2020 really throws you off with the years.
Yeah.
I shot it right after Suitable Boy, and it was great. So the show is Alankrita is the showrunner and the director in the show, as well as Bornila Chatterjee, who did, excuse me, Hungry, which is the film with Nasir Bhai and everything.
Right.
So both of the women are the directors,
Wow.
and it'll be for Netflix. So it's about these women who work in the Indian banking industry. Pooja Bhatt is one of these women, one of the Begums, and Shahana Goswami, who was my
Yes.
partner in Suitable Boy.
Yeah, I was going to
She's
say.
also in this one. And in fact, yeah, so we're married again in this one. It's just by chance that we got casted again. And Amrita Subhash is there. She was in like Killa and Gully
Yeah,
Boy.
she's
She's a
great.
Marathi actress. She's done a lot of work.
Fantastic.
Fantastic. And Plabita, and there's a Plabita who was in Lipstick Under My Burqa, which
Yes.
was Alankrita's film. And there is one, two, three, four, and I think there's a young actress who's like a young actor from maybe Singapore, but I think she's also one of the Begums, because it's all about the women who are kind of and she's a younger woman, so I mean young kid.
Right.
So it's all their stories and kind of how it all affects each other, and we're all working in the bank. So Shahana and my characters work in this bank, and then it's about a couple, and yeah, it's in that world. I was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I'm also trying not to say too much because it's coming out soon, and we are a little far away. No one's really briefed me, so I'm just kind of saying all the things that I think I can say. But it was a great experience. I mean, it was great working with Shahana because I
Yeah.
just worked with her in Suitable. She's fantastic, and I love her. Very generous actor. Um, and to be directed by Alankrita and Bornila was also again very great. I've been realizing that my last four jobs have been directed by women. It's been
Yeah. I was
Rohena
going to
for
say.
Sir, Suitable is Meera, and then I had and Begums is again two women. So it's been great, man. I had a great time. And I look forward to seeing it myself, because I have no idea what it looks like. I have really no idea.
Uh-huh.
So yeah,
Right.
but it'll be nice. It'll be nice. It's something different for me, and but we'll see. We'll see how it turns out. I don't want to say too much, because you say too much and then you see it yourself. You're like, that didn't happen.
Yeah.
You know.
No, I get it. I get it. You have to remain some of the
So
mystery. You have to keep us in suspense so we
yeah,
can enjoy the show. But yeah, I
right,
think I'm looking forward to seeing that, and I think it sounds very
right.
exciting, Vivek. Because, like I said, I think after Sir, it's just left us wanting to see more of you. I mean, I liked you in A Suitable Boy, as well. I really enjoyed that. In fact, I even spoke with Shahana near like at the time when it was being showed here in UK on BBC. So I really genuinely liked your performance there as well. And I can't wait
Right.
to see Bombay Begums as well.
And thank you.
Thank you so much, Vivek, for joining me on today's chat. I've been wanting
Of
to
course.
speak with you for so long, and I think the fact that it's finally happened, I'm just so grateful, and I can't wait to catch up with you once again, hopefully in the near future for more projects. And thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, man. Thank you for having me, and thank you for supporting the work. I really appreciate it. And good luck to you and your channel, man.
Thank you so much, Vivek. Thank you. Take care.
All right. You too. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too.